Okay, so with all the bits and pieces going on with the 12 and such, I've been riding the 12 a lot and the 14, and the ZZR not so much. And I had some issues with the carbs and things. Um, However, it's all fit now, and oh, it's wonderful. The pickup, acceleration, everything is just absolutely spot on now. So we've actually had a lot of bad weather here. It's just been raining. This is one of the few days where there's still rain clouds in the sky, but I hope to stay dry. So I've taken it out, and not a long run, only about 40 miles or so, but it's been absolutely gorgeous. I mean, apart from the carbs and such, I had all the brakes and such done, so it's really nice. So, what's it like? Well, the engine is amazing, you know, and I ride the 12R and the 14R, which obviously they're faster, but this is still an incredibly quick machine, and the sound of a ZZR engine on full chat is just something to behold. Um, Obviously, being carb as opposed to fuel injection, the other two are. You know, carb bikes have a different sound, different feel. So I love it. Um, so what's it like, really, riding and owning, in this case, a 33-year-old bike? Well, there's two ways of looking at this, really. Bikes this age are kept for one of two reasons. Either somebody likes to have a bike of this era, you know, lovely condition and such, and spends a lot of time and effort building them up, and that's great. And then you have the others where people may not be able to afford, you know, a modern bike and still want a very fast bike, so they pick up ZZR. And you can get a really good ZZR for not a great deal of money in the West, anyway. Not so much here, but in the West. And that's okay. But what's rarely talked about is the cost and the maintenance that one has to do on bikes this age if you do ride them and ride them hard. And it comes as a shock to people sometimes. They buy them and then they need a spare part. They go online and find that it's absolutely horrendous money for parts. And I think that's probably the same for any 30, in this case 33-year-old bike. I recently refurbished a ZXR750, and you know, the price of spares for that was let's say they weren't cheap. Now on this one, to be brutally honest, I mean, I have spent a massive amount of money, several times what I paid for the bike. And bear in mind, here, if there was another ZZR in this condition in the Philippines, which there isn't, you know, you'd be paying in the region of $3,000 or $4,000 US dollars for it. So, in the time that I've had this, there are so many new parts on here. Most of them brand new, some reconditioned and such. And over the, what is it, 11, 12 years that I've owned it, there's, there's a great deal that was not fitted to this bike when it was made. Now, owning a bike at this age, forget the romantic reasons, is they're great machines, but you do have to put in preventive maintenance. You do have to carefully check the bike because things age and they stop working. Seals get hard and brittle. And so what I would say is if you get one of these, from the mid 90s, that every time you remove something, put in new seals. Don't sort of say, oh, well, they look okay, because I promise you, they will leak. And as I mentioned earlier, you have to be prepared to pay out money. These are not a cheap option. Bikes like this at this age, they're not a cheap option. And that's not even counting the consumables that any large capacity, very fast machine requires. Regular oil changes, and brake pads, tires. It mounts up. So if you are in a position of perhaps not having a large amount of surplus cash, I would think very carefully about getting a machine of this age.
Battery level is low.
And doing maintenance on your own. I mean, again here, the cost of maintenance from, for example, my very trusted mechanic is ridiculously low. But still, over the years, I've done quite a lot of the maintenance myself. There are certain things I don't check, I don't do. Electrics and the carbs, I don't do that. But a lot of the other maintenance I do myself. And from reading all the posts online, the cost of having work done in a workshop in the UK, for example, is eye-watering. Plus, as time goes on, it's more and more difficult to find mechanics who know how to work on these bikes of this age. So that has to be taken into account as well. Now, what's it like in comparison to more modern machines? Well, I use the word to describe both this one, the ZZR11, and the ZX12R. They're raw. You're back to basics riding, which, if you're like me, you love it. No quick shifters. You have to learn to rev match. No digital information telling you when was the last time you scratched your ass. Nothing. No ABS, no traction control, no nothing. And for many of us, particularly the older generation, but also some of the younger lads, it's that fully engaged riding experience that we love. But if you're the sort of person who is used to, traction control, ABS, all this sort of stuff, then, again, think very carefully. Because bikes like this and the 12R and such, they're not that forgiving. If you make a mistake, you'll pay for it. I regularly ride with guys with the latest machinery, H2SX and all this sort of stuff. And the interesting thing is they all want to ride this ZZR11 and the 12R, but they won't. And they're quite honest. They say because not having ABS and traction control would worry them. So, yeah, I get it. That's all they've known. And what's it like riding with more modern bikes? Well, I'll tell you, this thing never, ever gets left behind. Now, I have different suspension and various other bits and pieces on there. And it's a big bike. And the center of gravity seems to be quite high on it. So you have to work. But, I'm not the greatest rider in the world. But I never get left behind. And normally, the ZZR tends to be at the front. So And they're always really surprised, particularly if I ride with people. You know, in the Philippines, a lot of people don't even know what a ZZR1100 is. And it always blows them away how quick you can be on these. So, you know, it's easy to see why this was the fastest bike in the world for 6 going on 7 years. So, yeah, the brakes, they're not as slam dunk as modern bikes, because modern bikes have this, they have the ABS. So the brakes can be really, really severe, and the ABS will get people out of trouble. Well, it's not the same on this. I mean, I have the 6-pot calipers from a GSXR fitted on this, and they're good, but they tend to be more progressive than more modern bikes. And you can still lock the wheel, but you've got to pull really hard on that lever to do so. But they also allow very progressive braking. Will they stop you as quickly as a well-ridden ABS? Probably not. But again, now it comes down to how you ride these things. You perhaps leave a little bit more space. Okay. Obviously, speed and performance, it has more than the average rider will ever use. I mean, I regularly do, 250 or more on it. Most riders never do that speed anyway. It doesn't matter what they're riding. So, it's good. A lot of traffic here. If you look at the dash, okay, it's all obviously analog, which again I prefer. I am not that keen on digital displays. I don't need to know, when was the last time I had a meal, or I'm being facetious, but it tells me exactly what I need to know. And because, I've ridden these bikes for, 19 years or so, I don't actually need to read anything. The positions of the needles, when I glance at it, I know automatically where the speed I'm doing, the revs, whatever else. So for me, I like the old analog displays. I really do. Not that keen on TPFT or whatever. Riding position is, tremendous. I once rode from the Spanish border back up to Bristol, one go, stopping only for fuel and the ferry, and at high speed, and no problem at all. Then legs ached a little bit after I'd been riding for like 9 hours or so, but nothing. Just you can straighten them and flex them, and it was fine. There's not many bikes that allow that. Seating position is a little bit weight on the front. Obviously, it's not as radical as others, but in traffic, sometimes you can feel it. But once you start motoring, the weight comes off your wrist. The other one is, and this is the same for the 14 and the 12 as well, is that the clutch is quite heavy compared to some. And if you're in town or stuck in traffic, you will develop strong muscles in that left hand, that's for sure. I regularly ride with a friend who's got the H2SX, and he has auto blip. It's just, it works tremendously. But I just don't get it. But then again, if I was a youngster, only brought up on bikes with auto blip, then I would think it was normal. But for me, having to rev match is one of the great parts of riding. You're fully in tune with your machine rather than letting electronics. One thing about riding here, where the ambient temperature is so high, is the heat. The heat coming off the engine. Because of the shape of the fairing, it's funneled directly back onto your legs. And believe me, if you have any skin showing, it's serious burning. So, I remember living in northern Germany and then riding back in the middle of winter, and that bit of heat coming from the engine, it wasn't a great deal, but it was gorgeous. Here, on the other hand, it's not that pleasant. But as you can see from my temperature gauge, even, I've done quite a lot of work on the cooling system on this, new water pumps, new, um, the rad cleaned out, new coolant pipes and such. So it works very efficiently.